Welcome back, everybody. Today we have another edition of The Internet's Darkest Corners number 6 by the one and only Nick Crowley. What is in store this time? I can only imagine.
Fifth alarm. Working structure fire. 7741 Liberty Road Drive.
Damn.
It's 9 a.m. on May 18th, 2024. Residents of Charlotte, North Carolina wake up to the smell and sight of black smoke billowing up into the sky. The source: a massive 7-story apartment complex, home to 239 luxury units, or at least what should have been luxury units. At the time, the structure was still under construction, meaning that thankfully no residents were living there. But this in and of itself presented two major problems. The first was that, in its current state, the top 5 floors were primarily just the bones of the structure, made almost entirely of wooden insulation, making the building as a whole extremely flammable. Meaning that, although the fire had started out relatively small, it was quickly going to consume the entire complex if it wasn't put out quickly. Which brings us to the second and even more glaring problem. The building was actively under construction when the fire started, and that morning 17 construction workers had clocked in, all of whom were now in grave danger. And by the time the firefighters arrived on the scene...
Jeez! Wait. How did the fire start? That's what I'm curious about.
The situation was already dire. And so firefighters rushed in, finding a large group of the employees and leading them out to safety. Though when they made it outside, they made the horrifying realization that they had only found 15 of them. Somewhere within that labyrinth of burning wooden walls, 2 men were left behind, trapped and calling out to anyone who might hear them. And these pleas weren't just being made to those on the scene, as in the following minutes, one of the trapped men, 30-year-old DeMonte Sherrill, would take out his phone, open up Facebook, and go live, revealing the horrifying reality that both he and his friend had found themselves in.
Somebody send help, we're in Southpark. Help!
Oh my gosh. I gotta tell you, working those hard labor jobs that, that got you like in the elements, you're working like when it's hot, it's cold, it's raining, like construction work. It's not for the weak-hearted, man. And most of the people who work these construction jobs have like a no-nonsense type of attitude, man. You better not mess with anybody that does construction because they will whoop your ass. They got that real strong practical strength, so they strong. They've been carrying shit all day. And on top of that, it takes somebody to be mentally tough to be a construction worker because you're working in the most crazy environments, man. And sometimes a lot of people who get onto those job sites, they come from either maybe jail or prison. I mean, you have a wide variety of different personalities and you guys gotta all mesh and work together.
If you own a computer, here's how to get the most out of it. Watch this, watch this.
Oh boy. But I wonder how the fire started, man.
Yo, I'm at Southpark right now.
I know it's hot
at
too.
Work, the building on fire.
That shit's hot.
I can't get out.
The stream showed DeMonte Sherrill and his friend Reuben Holmes somewhere deep within the prospective apartment complex. And though the fire hadn't yet reached them, the smoke certainly had, blanketing them in a thick, impenetrable fog, not only making breathing extremely difficult, but also making it nearly impossible for rescuers to see them.
It's getting harder and harder for them to see us. We're gonna have to stand out here and see.
Oh my gosh. They don't got no exit? No exits at all, man?
The building on fire, I'm trapped inside, me and my man.
Oh Lord.
This was likely one of the reasons why DeMonte chose to start this livestream, hopeful that it could show rescuers exactly where they were.
Right.
But based on the footage, their positioning was far from ideal. They were on the second highest floor, floor 6, which had only one access point, a single stairway that was on the complete opposite side of the building.
What?
And based on their testimony in the footage, something had clearly blocked their path to that one remaining exit,
wow.
Meaning that the only other way out would be to jump. Though at 6 stories in the air, and falling into what would likely be the heart of the fire, this would have meant certain death. There was quite literally nowhere for them to go.
Where's OSHA when you need them? My goodness. Saying the only exit that they have is one that's on the other side of the building. and it's being blocked off by, you know, debris, I guess. But I mean, you would think that they would have multiple exits just so that if ever something like this were to occur, they would have another option to leave. That has to be a violation somewhere.
Rescue was their only hope.
Ooh. You either jump into your death or you get burnt up.
Yo, this building is on fire. I'm at work. Somebody send help. We're in Southpark.
Seemingly realizing this, DeMonte began to grow more desperate, yelling out into the void of smoke, while Ruben can be seen in the background waving his phone flashlight,
Wow.
with both men doing anything they could to help rescuers find them. Before
what?
the stream abruptly ends.
Oh my god.
Rescuers were aware of the unfolding situation on the 6th story. They first tried to reach the men by using a massive crane with a basket attached, which can actually be seen in DeMonte's livestream. Though in it, you can see that it's also facing the complete wrong direction, as the smoke was just that impenetrable. However, at one point, it's believed that the crane operator did actually see these men, but the blaze was just too extreme, leading to the operator himself having to be rescued. This
Oh my
left only
gosh.
one real option for saving DeMonte and Ruben. They were going to have to go in after them. And so they climbed that stairway up to floor 6 and started their trek to the opposite end of the structure. Though before they could even make it halfway, the rescuers were relegated to a slow crawl, as the inferno around them raged more and more intensely, and the smoke grew thicker and thicker. Though that's when they began to hear screaming. Somewhere, lost in that maze, Ruben and DeMonte were yelling as loud as they could for help. This sound was a sign that they were getting close. Though just then, rescuers would be met with another sound.
All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure per command. All companies working 7741 Liberty Road Drive, evacuate structure.
Command all companies, this will be defensive at this time. We'll be ready for this side to collapse. Everybody get out of the collapse zone.
Wow, so-
Confirming you are coming out, but you're not out of the building.
Wow.
With the order being made for all of them to evacuate, as by this point, the structure was engulfed in flames,
Oh my
and a collapse was
gosh.
imminent. The firefighters tried to call out to the two in one last attempt to guide them towards rescue, but they never came. In fact, at that point, the structure fell eerily silent. They would leave that structure without DeMonte or Ruben,
Oh
and
my
minutes later, the fire
gosh.
consumed the entire building, with the temperature inside reaching 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
2,000.
Before
It collapsed.
Jesus Christ, man.
it would eventually topple to the ground. And inside, DeMonte and Ruben would become the sole fatalities of this catastrophe.
Wow.
Yo, I'm at Southpark right now. At work, and the building on fire, and I can't get out.
Bro, like, what gets me is why wouldn't they have more exits, you know? Feel awful because they are thinking like somebody's about to come to save them, but the firefighters, and I get why they had to evacuate, because if they didn't, they would have died too, but I just don't know what else they could have done. I feel like whoever was over the work safety for this construction just dropped the ball completely. Like, completely, dude. It just feels like there was a bad judgment call somewhere in this situation, because these two guys should still be here. They should have never lost their lives. That's terrifying, man.
It's getting harder and harder for them to see us.
And they can't
Knowing
even
how the
see
story
them.
ends would make this live stream difficult for anyone to watch. But what I find most upsetting about it is that the majority of those who initially watched this were his own friends and family that followed him on Facebook, with these viewers including his own mother. And a lot of them probably had no idea he even worked this job, as he had just been hired that week.
Wow.
His brother had also caught the stream as it was happening and actually rushed over to the scene, where he pleaded with the firefighters to watch the footage. But despite doing the best they could, there was just too much working against them to save DeMonte and Ruben. Following an investigation into the fire, it was discovered that the crew was using an organic foam insulation, which was known to be extremely flammable and produce thick black smoke. And this became deadly when the machine used to spray that insulation caught fire, sending the whole building up in flames, where they had yet to install any sort of smoke detector or alarm system to alert the crew of a fire. Making matters worse, there had been a temporary set of stairs made right where the two men had been trapped, but that stairwell had just been removed in order to make way for the permanent set of stairs. Because of this and a myriad of other issues, the companies involved with this construction were forced to pay a fine of $50,000 and are currently being sued by the families of both victims.
As they should.
But regardless of the outcome, nothing will ever make up for the loss of DeMonte Sherrill and Reuben Holmes.
That could have been avoided, man. I just think that if you're working with highly flammable material, for everybody's safety that's working on this construction, there needs to be exits just in case it catches on fire, you know? Now, nobody can predict the machine to like bust into flames and start this whole like, you know, mess. But also it was extremely unfortunate that they didn't even like bother to install a smoke detector or a smoke alarm just in case this shit happens. So, I mean, this whole thing was botched. I mean, as far as like the work safety protocols, I mean, they seemingly broke a ton. So it was just a bad situation all around. But I feel so bad for his family members that saw him online. And I feel like if you were to put yourself in their shoes, you know, if you had any type of like, you know, loved ones in this position, you'd feel just like how helpless they do in that situation, you know? It's just sad, man. It's sad, dude. And he just started that job the same week. The Johnny Cashman incident.
Things were getting concerning.
Man.
Johnny Cashman spoke to his family nearly every single day. But now, on the 6th day without receiving any communication from him, they knew that something was wrong.
The 6th day?
Johnny lived in Lynchburg, Virginia, hundreds of miles away from his home in Maine. And so, being unable to check on him themselves, they called police in the area and requested a welfare check. Police entered Johnny's apartment on the 19th of April, 2022. And hours later, they would call his parents with the news that they had found their son dead on the floor.
Whoa.
According to the officers, Johnny had experienced some sort of medical event that led to GI bleeding that ultimately claimed his life. But this made no sense to Johnny's family.
What's GI
He was only
bleeding?
38 years old and had just been given a clean bill of health after a full medical exam only 4 months prior.
Wait, let me look up what GI bleeding is. Gastrointestinal bleeding, also known as gastrointestinal hemorrhage, refers to bleeding anywhere in the digestive tract from the mouth to the rectum. It could be a sign of digestive tract disorder, and it could be caused by a number of conditions, including ulcers, hemorrhoids, or cancer. While most GI bleeding stops on its own, acute bleeding is an emergency that requires immediate medical care. Ooh, yeah, that sounds awful.
It was so out of the blue, in fact, that they even asked if there were any signs of a struggle, or if there was any evidence that he may have taken his own life. But they were assured that there was no trauma, no drugs, and nothing suspicious found on the scene. And that, as shocking as it was, his cause of death was entirely natural, and had likely just been spurred on by drinking and tobacco use, with the only solace being that Johnny didn't suffer, as they stated that he had died instantly.
Wow.
Because of this, no autopsy was performed, as the case seemed as straightforward as it gets. And despite his family questioning if they should get their own autopsy, they were told by officers that it wouldn't be necessary. And so, Johnny's body was cremated and sent back to Maine, in what seemed to be the end of Johnny Cashman's story.
Wow. April 29th, 2022.
10 days
later.
after Johnny's body was discovered, his ex-girlfriend and her mother made their way back to his apartment in order to retrieve some of her belongings. She knew that re-entering the space was going to be difficult, but ultimately there was no way she could have prepared for what was waiting for her inside.
What?
There was blood everywhere.
Oh.
It was pooled in the bathrooms, wiped on doors, spread all over the living space, and was even found on a chair and a banister.
Oh my god.
But the most horrifying part of it all was the walls. They were covered in splattered blood, which revealed long streaking handprints. It was something straight out of a horror movie, and although Johnny's cause of death was deemed natural, what they found in that apartment seemed anything but.
Yeah, that does not seem natural.
Traumatized by what they were.
I don't know what if GI bleeding causes that type of situation, but I mean, that looked like it could be like a struggle or something. Like he might have been like attacked or something, maybe? I don't know if GI bleeding would actually do that to someone. I'm not sure.
Witnessing, the pair snapped multiple photos of the bloodshed and ran out of the unit, directly into Johnny's neighbor. This neighbor revealed that they believed something far worse than a medical emergency had happened to Johnny, as they had a security camera mounted to their door which faced Johnny's unit, and on the day of his passing, it captured something incredibly disturbing.
Really? 3:03 p.m. date of death? Okay.
The footage shows Johnny making his way up the flight of stairs leading to his apartment at around 3:03 p.m. Nothing seems out of the ordinary at all, though it is noteworthy that he was holding an empty glass, perhaps insinuating that he had been drinking. But this doesn't seem to impair his movements much at all, as he punches in the code and enters his home, just as he did every other day. But moments later, something happens inside that unit, and while it goes unseen, it doesn't go unheard.
1 minute after entry?
Oh, dude, what the fuck? What are you doing? Yo, what the fuck, dude?
Oh, somebody's in there with him. Somebody's definitely in there with him.
What are you doing, man?
Somebody killed him, dude. That sounds like a struggle. Somebody killed him. Somebody.
The audio seems to depict a man yelling, asking repeatedly, "What are you doing?" and begging for something to stop. On top of this, you can also hear loud thuds and banging.
That is terrifying. This video hits different if you live alone. Like, I think this is everybody's biggest fear when you live alone. If something happens, you gotta deal with it, you know? But, you know, I'm not like a super paranoid guy, but, you know, sometimes when I come home, man, I gotta do some double takes, man. I gotta check things out. Did I leave that cup like it was when I left? Was that door always closed when I left? Was that chair always pulled out? You gotta think about these things, man, because you don't want to go into your apartment and have somebody waiting on you with like a knife or a hammer. You gotta just be, you know, you gotta be mindful of this stuff. I'm not saying you gotta be paranoid or be scared, but, you know, check things out. You know, whenever I'm in the shower, I hear like a thud or a sound, I turn the shower off immediately. I jump out the shower and I get my weapon of choice and I lock the door and I just listen. Because this right here is terrifying, man. Now, we all say what we would probably do in this situation. Oh, man, I'll like grab my gun. Oh, I'll grab a weapon. Oh, I'll beat this person up in my apartment. You don't know how you would react in these high stress situations when somebody's coming at you to try to like harm you, you know? Especially if you're not expecting someone to do that. Some of us would probably freeze up, you know? So you just don't know. And I think you have to be very careful, especially if you're by yourself.
Almost as if things were falling over inside, or there was some sort of physical altercation, before the unit then goes quiet just a few seconds later. It was unclear if this voice was Johnny's, or perhaps someone else who had been inside the unit. But regardless, one thing was apparent from this audio. There was someone else in that apartment,
Definitely feel
despite
like it
the
was
fact
Johnny.
that Johnny lived alone. And just 7 minutes later,
There you go.
this unseen person would emerge.
What? 7 minutes after entry? Who the fuck is this dude?
This clearly wasn't Johnny, and after leaving the unit, the anonymous man nearly makes it out of the building before he seems to change his mind.
What? What is he?
Turning around and walking back up the stairs before fiddling with the door handle, touching it only with his sleeve, like he was wiping off his fingerprints.
That's exactly what he was doing. man killed him. He killed him. 1,000%. They had a struggle. What I'm thinking is he probably stabbed him, and then he started like bleeding everywhere. And he just, you couldn't probably call 911 or get help. He just died, But who the heck is that guy?
He then walks down the stairs and stops once again, where he seems to be in a state of shock over whatever had just transpired.
Yeah.
Before he composes himself and walks out of the building.
Because he just killed somebody. He just killed Johnny.
But the footage wasn't quite finished yet.
Oh my gosh. 8 minutes after entry? Oh my god.
Just 1 minute later, you can hear Johnny shouting for help from inside the apartment, to which moments after, he stops, and no further sound or activity would come from Johnny's unit until police arrived 5 days later.
Dude, that shit sent chills down my spine. Like, dude, that is... Oh my
The footage and the scene at the apartment seemed to contradict what Johnny's family had been told about his death.
Absolutely.
The blood all over made it obvious that Johnny's death had not happened in an instant. And this, coupled by the presence of this unknown man who was clearly distraught and wiping off his fingerprints, as well as the sound of the apparent struggle inside, seemed to point towards something much more sinister than what was initially conveyed to the family.
Right.
But even with this footage, police still believed that Johnny's death was due to a medical emergency, as they quickly changed their initial story, saying that the blood spread was due to uncontrollable vomiting,
What?
and that Johnny had in fact likely suffered, at least for a short while. But this medical emergency wasn't elaborated on, as they didn't truly know what caused it, as no autopsy was ever performed, nor could one ever be performed, as by this point...
Oh, okay, how did the police... Okay, did the police already have this footage, and then they still told... Johnny's parents that they didn't find anything suspicious? Is that what it is? Because how could you not look at that footage and go, holy shit, yeah, who is this guy? I mean, how could you not look at that footage and go, yeah, this dude, whoever the heck this guy was in a leather jacket, definitely did something to your son. It was not GI bleeding. He probably stabbed this guy. But I don't understand how they could even say that it was nothing suspicious and then he died from natural causes after not factoring in this random dude. I don't get it. I don't get it, man.
Johnny was already cremated. And cremated because of the officer's initial statements.
Because of the officer's initial statements. So now they can't even... And the family was about to do their own autopsy until the cop was like, oh, that's not necessary. Dude, if they were able to do that, they would have for sure found out that whoever the hell that guy was leaving his apartment had something to do with his death. I won't say that this is the hardest I've ever seen cops drop the ball, but this is pretty hard.
So if Johnny had actually been murdered, which the footage does seem to suggest,
it does.
There was now virtually no way to prove it. And what makes this even more frustrating is that law enforcement already had this footage. It was collected. So
they already had the footage. They already had the footage. Because I was thinking like, wait a minute, did they not know that this... Because I was assuming that maybe the cops didn't have the footage yet and they went back and they're like, oh shit. But bro, they had the footage. So you're telling me you had this footage and you still told this family that, oh, he died of natural causes. After hearing that audio. That guy in the leather jacket must have been important or something.
That very day, and they either didn't fully look through it or didn't think that this was overly suspicious.
How?
But everyone else surely did.
How?
And soon, this video began making the rounds online, leading to one glaring question being asked. Who is this man?
Who is?
As no one in Johnny's life recognized him.
Right.
Well, it wouldn't be until May 11th that investigators would finally ID him as Stephen Church.
Stephen
and upon being
Church?
questioned, he revealed that he had moved to Lynchburg for work, but the opportunity he had lined up fell through shortly after he arrived, leaving him with no money and without a place to stay, which is when he met Johnny, who offered to let him crash on his couch. He supposedly stayed with Johnny for 3 days, and described Johnny as an alcoholic who drank constantly, including on that fateful day. When Johnny arrived home, Stephen claims that he started drunkenly yelling at him about paying rent, which led to the two getting into a verbal altercation. But he insisted that this altercation never turned physical, and that he left immediately after, to which he quickly went back to clean his prints because he was afraid that Johnny would try and have him arrested for squatting. And having already racked up 2 felonies in his life, Stephen was paranoid about going back to jail.
No, I don't believe that.
But when Stephen was leaving, he did mention seeing Johnny hunched over the toilet as if he were going to vomit. But he claims to have left before this so-called medical emergency.
All cap. He is capping hard. We all heard that audio. He's saying that he left before things got physical. And as soon as he left, he saw Johnny like hunched over and on the toilet. And no, dude, I don't believe none of that shit he said. I don't believe none of it. But what's a little bit weird to me is that how could you allow someone you barely know crash on your couch? Now, I get that he was just being nice, but you don't know this dude. But you gotta think about your own safety. You really, really do. I mean, I don't know if he even knew this guy had 2 felonies. But besides the point, you don't know who you're dealing with. I don't care how sad his story might seem to Johnny. I would have said, I'm sorry, dude. That sucks, but I don't even know you, man. I cannot for the life of me feel safe in my own apartment if I let you stay here on my couch. You know, I don't know you. I don't know what your tendencies are. I don't know. I don't know. And unfortunately, he paid for it with his life. There was a story similar to this one. I don't remember who it was. If I find it, I'll maybe post it in the video.
Big smile, an even bigger heart.
He was so emotional. He loved cats. He was a soft-hearted guy.
Louis Stafford.
He was a good friend. I never known him to be a bad friend to anybody.
A manager at the Taco Bell on 23 Mile in Chesterfield Township. Louis' big heart apparent when he noticed one of his employees was coming into work with wet clothes. Dijon Drake admitted to being homeless, and Louis, being Louis, offered to let him stay with him at his apartment, less than a mile down the road from the Taco Bell.
He had a good sense of humor. He was a big brother. He was a younger brother.
But a short time after the employee started staying with Louis, his behavior became combative towards his coworkers and towards Louis, according to Louis' mother. Louis told Dijon he could no longer stay with him at his apartment. It was Saturday, July 29th.
That's when the fight broke out. The dude didn't want to leave. He just refused to leave, and he pushed Louis, and Louis fought back and beat him up, and so he shot him.
Louis Stafford, just 27 years old, died at a nearby hospital.
I will never understand the universe and how God chooses who leaves and how they leave.
Police arrested 24-year-old Dijon Drake on the scene. He's being held at the Macomb County Jail on a $2 million bond. A message Louis' mom wants to share.
You just cannot let your heart overrule your safety. The world has changed, and it's the luck of the draw. You don't know if you stop and help that person, you know, what's on their mind just because they're in need.
You might have good intentions, right? But you just got to think about how that could backfire on you, you know? And a lot of the times people end up losing their lives because this guy or this person just is unstable in the head. They have mental issues and they end up taking it out on you.
Emergency started. This is the gist of Stephen's account from that day, but the problem is it doesn't really match up with what we're hearing in the video.
Yeah, it does not. Bro, this guy, Johnny, sounded like he was scared as hell.
From the footage, we can hear everything going on in that unit, but at no point do we hear any sort of an argument, nor do we hear anything about rent.
Right.
With the phrases lending themselves more to a physical struggle rather than a verbal one.
Right.
In fact, the whole time it appears that we're only hearing one voice. But there is an exception.
He says, I can't stop.
To my knowledge, it's never been conclusively determined whose voice is who in the recording, and either scenario paints a far different picture of what may have happened inside that room.
Bro, it's easy to tell
But
for me.
regardless, this audio makes it clear that Steven's story was fabricated at least to some degree, as he also fails to account for the loud banging in the background. And because of this, his version of events is generally rejected, with most people seeming to believe one of two main theories. The first is that, upon arriving home, Johnny and Steven had gotten into a physical altercation, resulting in Johnny taking some sort of blow to his abdomen, which in turn triggered or exacerbated this medical emergency.
This is the theory that I'm going with. I don't know what the second theory is, but this theory makes the most sense.
Johnny naturally experienced a medical emergency, leading to this catastrophic GI bleed. Upon seeing this, and perhaps being
Johnny died from a naturally occurring GI bleed? Hell no. But he had a clean bill of health. I don't understand how anybody could believe theory 2.
in a state of shock, Steven yelled at him, demanding to know what was happening and telling him to stop, as perhaps he was moving around the apartment and tracking blood everywhere, which would explain the other voice saying, I can't stop. I could see how this experience would make no sense to Steven, and perhaps just having no idea what was happening, he left and tried to make it look like he was never there, as he was afraid of being blamed for whatever was happening to Johnny. And so he essentially left Johnny there to die, whether knowingly or unknowingly. What bothers me about this theory is why 911 was never called.
Exactly.
Not only by Steven, but by Johnny too, as his phone was found in the unit with blood on it, implying that he had it in his hand at some point, though it's possible that the massive blood loss just made him too disoriented. Both of these theories seem believable, or at least more so than the explanation that Steven had given. However, in October of 2022, Johnny's case would officially be closed for good, with Steven being cleared of any wrongdoing. As Johnny's death was labeled the same way that it always has been, a medical emergency that couldn't be further elaborated on. With the most relevant...
I can't believe Steven got cleared, man. How does anybody get cleared from this incident? Are you kidding me? Bro, it just seems so obvious that Steven killed this guy. I don't understand how anybody else could think differently. Are you kidding me? Why the hell would he be so scared to call 911? Honestly, is that not a very rational thing to do? If you see somebody that's experiencing a medical emergency, would that not be the first thing you do? You're gonna just leave quietly, like as if nothing's wrong? Like, bro, call the fucking cops. Call an ambulance. Something. Do you need help? Let me help you out. Why would you get blamed for that? I'll tell them what the hell happened. Oh yeah, Johnny was bleeding everywhere, and I just decided to call 911, and you guys came, and he's not responding. He's unconscious. Like, bro, he just leaves, dude. But even if that were the case, but again, you can't match up that particular scenario after you hear the fucking audio. The audio is what is so obvious to me that this was a murder. This guy's like saying, Johnny's saying, what the F, dude, stop, dude, stop. Like, if he felt like, okay, let's just humor this guy for a minute, right? If he was in fact bleeding everywhere, I don't think he would be saying what was said in the audio. I'm no like detective, okay? But in my opinion, I just feel like a person would probably be like, hey man, are you okay? You want some help? Oh my God, what's happening? Are you all right? Are you fine? If I heard that type of audio or that type of dialogue, then I'd be more inclined to believe what the second theory or what Steven is talking about. I feel like we just have irrefutable evidence, and I'm just like not understanding how the cops thought that this was not suspicious. How did anybody think this was not suspicious is beyond me.
Evidence being that Steven's shoe prints were not found in the blood, but Johnny's were, implying that he had not been part of the struggle. But in my mind, this can be explained by both theories mentioned previously. Though regardless, without the possibility of an autopsy, this is likely where this case ends for good. But with this disturbing footage, I can't help but think that there was more to the story than we may ever know.
There's definitely is, Ben. There's definitely is.
I want to get my degree done and get started on my career.
You cannot tell me this dude did not murder Johnny, bro. And I hate how the cops just did not care enough to do an autopsy. That pissed me off. That pissed me the hell off, y'all.
It was around 7:30 a.m. on a warm July morning back in 2019. 17-year-olds Bethany Martin and a 16-year-old friend decide to walk to a gas station near their home in San Antonio, Texas. And as the two of them made their way down the road, their path brought them parallel to a drainage ditch, which was often filled with various trash and other discarded material. But on this day, something far more interesting caught their eye. It looked like a man crouching down and leaned up against one of the concrete walls, but the closer they got, the more they realized how unusual his posture was. He looked completely unnatural, and he wasn't moving.
Ooh.
And by the time they came face to face with him, the reality of the situation would hit them. They had just found a dead body. This discovery was enough to traumatize anyone, especially two teenagers. And upon calling the police and being sent on their way, Bethany and her friend would make the long walk back home, contemplating what to do next, before they eventually landed on the idea of sharing their experience with the world. And so, as soon as they got in the door, they began to set up lights and their camera in order to film a TikTok.
Why? Us remembering we found a dead body this morning? Why would anybody... I mean, the absolute disconnection from reality that some of these kids have, it's just beyond me, man. I don't understand how anybody could just think that that's something that should be shared online. I just don't understand, what are they trying to do other than just garner attention? Really fucking stupid. And this is the video?
The clip showed the two sitting on a couch appearing to be in a state of shock, with the words, "Us remembering we found a dead body this morning," plastered on the screen, offering no other context aside from the description, which simply read,
They're literally
"I wish we were kidding. All respect to the family."
All respect to the family, but you put a... Let me stop. Let me calm down.
Sympathy for the girls, while others viewed their post as insensitive and exploitative. But others weren't even convinced it was real, partially due to this glaring lack of context. But any doubt of this post's legitimacy would be quickly thwarted by a discovery made not even...
How cringe is this? I'm sorry for pausing it. How cringe is them going and looking at each other slowly? How that's so stupid. That's so stupid.
Then one full day later, as it was revealed that this recording hadn't actually been the only video that these two girls had made on that fateful day.
Oh. Don't tell me that they actually filmed.
On their walk to the gas station, the girls had stumbled across the body of 25-year-old Marcus Adams, with the young man having seemingly perished earlier that morning, with it being apparent that he had taken his own life. But upon finding Marcus, the girls weren't actually overwhelmed with sadness or even shock, as instead, their focus immediately went to something far different, as something on the man's body had caught their attention.
What?
His necklace. The girls really liked it. In fact, the unnamed 16-year-old had said that it matched her fashion perfectly. And so, before police arrived, the two would once again pull out their phone and start recording, showing Bethany approaching the body with her intention being to grab his necklace.
Are you serious?
Which she eventually does, removing the medallion and giving it to her friend, before tossing the chain into the grass nearby, leading to the girls running away from the scene. The 16-year-old would then post that video onto her Snapchat story, for all of her close friends to see.
What?
I can't show the...
Y'all, what is this world that we live in, man? I just don't understand how somebody could just lack such empathy for another person who just perished. You know that this is a dead body, right? And instead of just leaving it alone, you go and take his necklace? I mean, how disrespectful. Because it matches your style? You know what this reminds me of? The Logan Paul situation. Back when he went to like, what was it, Japan or something? And he like recorded some person who unalived themselves. And he was just like hanging from a tree. I have no idea how he's still super popular, but that should have ended his whole career right there. Like, seriously. Like, the disconnection that people have with social media in real life, it's unsettling. It's disturbing. There's some things that don't need to be posted online. And the fact that you're making like a spectacle of it, like you're not even respecting what just happened to this individual. I mean, to take your own life, it's one of the most saddest things that could ever happen to an individual, man. The person that did it, whatever reasons that they had, were fighting demons, man. And they lost. Unfortunately, they lost. But you pull out your dumb phone, put that person's deceased body online just so you can get some clout. It's disgusting. It's disgusting behavior.
Footage for obvious reasons, but it's truly awful. And just based on the audio alone, you can tell that they're very obviously having fun doing this.
You gotta do it now.
Oh, my sister's sick. I can't believe it, man.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god.
This is so disgusting, man. It's disgusting behavior, man.
There's something so uniquely disturbing about it.
Yeah.
It's clear that upon finding the body, there was no real emotional impact on them, at least none that outweighed their desire to steal from it. And as if stealing from this man who had just taken his own life and posting it for all their friends to see as if it were a joke wasn't horrible enough, they then immediately posted this other video to TikTok in an attempt to garner sympathy. It's truly awful, and made even more appalling by reports that claim that the 16-year-old had actually worn this medallion in the TikTok video and in others made following its posting.
Wow.
And unfortunately, their actions had even more upsetting consequences.
I hope so.
As the footage from their Snapchat story was quickly downloaded by someone they knew and posted onto an app called Nextdoor, with the footage being totally uncensored.
Oh my
And it was on
gosh.
this app where it's claimed that many of Marcus Adams' own family members would see the footage.
Wow.
Many of whom weren't even aware that he was deceased.
Wow.
Just one day after posting this TikTok, both girls were questioned by the police after the incident and the footage was reported to them. And as a result, Bethany would be charged with theft of a human corpse, but would ultimately avoid any serious jail time. Meanwhile, the 16-year-old's name and charges were never publicly released, but we do know that the medallion was returned to the family. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Bethany would later come back to her TikTok page shortly after her arrest and share her side of the story, where she gave a less than half-hearted apology, while also claiming to be the victim, saying that her friend had pressured her to steal from Marcus.
Bullshit! Bullshit. This particular one bothers me so much, man. I just think that to come back to your TikTok to play the victim and garner sympathy because of something you did, and think that the internet's gonna be like, oh, it's okay. Yeah, you didn't know what you were doing. Oh, yeah, I mean, you're 17, but you know, it was a dead body. I mean, how could she come back and think that this would go in her favor, trying to act like she's the victim? After what you just did? There's no recovering from that. You did what you did. Your friend or whoever posted the video, you or her, and you guys did what you did because you thought it was funny, and you put it on TikTok. You took his medallion or his necklace or whatever, and you made a fucking joke out of his death. And to give like a half-ass apology. Man, listen.
Pressured her into making that TikTok in the first place because she thought it would be a hit.
Dumb.
Though obviously this didn't go over well.
Oh, weren't you laughing, psychopathic? Oh my God. You know, sometimes the internet is a great place. You know, I love it when the internet is able to deliver swift justice to certain individuals that definitely deserve it, you know, because in this particular case, I'm so happy that nobody was going for that shit at all. Like, at all. What did she think was gonna happen? Like, oh, we feel so bad for you.
On December 20th, 1984, 12-year-old Jonelle Matthews disappeared from her home in Greeley, Colorado in the evening hours.
This soul.
Earlier that day, she had sung at a Christmas concert with her school's choir, which her parents were unable to attend, as her mother was out of town and her father had gone to her sister's basketball game nearby, leading to Jonelle catching a ride home with a friend, being dropped off at her house sometime around 8:15, where she excitedly spoke to her father on the phone, letting him know that she had arrived home safe and sound. Approximately 1 hour later, her father, Jim Matthews, pulled into the driveway to find the garage door wide open, and the house completely empty.
Oh, wow.
Jonelle was gone, leaving behind her winter coat and even her shoes, despite it being a frigid, snowy night. And it was within that snow that was quickly piling up that lie one of the only real clues left behind at the scene. Footprints, leading directly to one of the home's windows, insinuating that someone had been watching Jonelle.
Oh my God.
12-year-old Jonelle Matthews disappeared from her Greeley home 1 month ago today. It's believed she's the victim of a kidnapping. She has not been seen or heard from since December 20th.
Her disappearance became a big news story almost immediately, with the whole community and really the whole country becoming invested in the fate of this girl, thanks in large part to her being one of the very first milk carton kids, meaning that her face and information about her disappearance was shown on countless milk cartons all across the country to get the word out. And as a result, this case became huge in the mainstream media, as even politicians began to make note of Jonelle's story, with then-President Ronald Reagan mentioning the girl in one of his speeches.
I learned about Jonelle Matthews of Greeley, Colorado, 5 days before Christmas. Jonelle disappeared from her home.
Though even with this
I can't stand Ronald Reagan, but that was nice.
Publicity, this didn't necessarily guarantee results. And soon, months would turn to years, and eventually to decades. And all the while, Jonelle's whereabouts remained a complete mystery. Eventually, the rise of the internet would start to play a key role in this case, where even in the late 2010s, over 3 decades after she had vanished, her case was still being shared and still being discussed, just as it had been 3 decades prior, with it still being a point of contention for politicians, even as recently as 2019.
Wow.
When a man running for governor of Idaho mentioned her disappearance in a Facebook post, 35 full years later. Regardless of Jonelle's whereabouts, her case was still very much alive, as the world, and especially Jonelle's parents, were haunted by the question, what happened to Jonelle Matthews?
Right.
But sure enough, in late 2019, they would finally get their answer.
Really?
Was found in Weld County earlier this week appeared to bring an end to a 3-decade-long search for a missing 12-year-old girl. The Greeley Tribune is reporting they are those of Jonelle Matthews.
On Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019, at roughly 4:50 p.m., a crew had been digging in an isolated field in Weld County, Colorado, in order to install a new pipeline, when they would uncover the decayed remains of a little girl. It was Jonelle, still wearing those clothes that she had worn to her recital, meaning she had likely died the very day she disappeared, having been killed by a single gunshot wound to the head.
How could somebody be so heartless, man? I mean, kidnappings with kids happen like damn near every day, you know? But I mean, it's just uneasy to think about how these people walk among us, man. I mean, a lot of these people are, you know, everyday people who you just would never expect, you know? It's just disgusting.
Jonelle Matthews had been murdered in cold blood, and almost immediately upon finding her body, the police would also zero in on their suspect. The man's name was Stephen Pankey, and at the time of Jonelle's disappearance, he had been living in the same general area in Colorado. But by 2019, Stephen had long since fled the area, as after the crime, he would eventually pack up seemingly out of the blue and move to Idaho, where when Jonelle's body was discovered, he just so happened to be running for governor.
What? Ed. I mean, but yeah, he knew that they was gonna be on his ass. It's just disgusting that he was about to be the governor. I mean, how many politicians, like people that are in super high positions, actually think like this and commit these type of crimes? You just never know. Like, it's just kind of like makes you think, you know? Imagine if they never caught this guy, Steven, you know? He would have been the governor of, I guess, Colorado. I don't know, I guess. But you would have never known that he got away with this. Or he did this, like, horrific crime to this poor girl. It's crazy. Wow. Oh,
and during his campaign, Pinky had put out a bizarre Facebook post about Jonelle, calling for the Colorado DA to oversee a fresh investigation, as he stated that the local police had wrongly been focused on the theory that Jonelle's disappearance was a child abduction and murder, which was quite convenient, as just a few months after posting this, he would be arrested for the abduction and murder of Jonelle Matthews.
He was trying to persuade public perception, you know? And he's such a piece of shit for that. But the fact that he is still so invested in this story is a little odd to me.
Police believe that Jonelle had first caught Steven's eye when he was working as a janitor at the church she attended, with this leading to him stalking her and eventually abducting her on that fateful night.
At a church.
Where he threw Jonelle in his car and ultimately ended her life, for no reason other than his sick satisfaction. He then proceeded to bury her in a field 20 miles away, in a spot that he was certain no one would ever find her.
Wow.
Now, the evidence supporting this is mainly circumstantial, but it is incredibly concerning.
Traditional core values with a biblical and constitutional perspective. And you went and murdered this poor girl. Oh my goodness.
Just one day after Jonelle's abduction, Pinky decided to take his wife to California in order to celebrate the holidays with his parents, with this trip being completely unplanned, as his wife was only told of it literally the day of. And making things stranger, when they returned home, Steven's car conveniently caught fire and was burned to a crisp, to which he offered no explanation for. But in response, he would take the car to a local scrapyard,
destroying
where it would be
evidence,
further destroyed, taking any potential evidence along with it.
Yeah.
But while this is all strange enough, police say that the main indicator that Steven was their man was his clear obsession with Jonelle's case. Right. Shortly after the slaying, Steven began listening and watching any news reports he could on Jonelle's case, while also having his wife read every single article about the missing girl out loud, to which he would often have her repeat them over and over again. But his obsession didn't stop there, as he would then start frequently calling the police, wanting to talk to them about the case, even going as far as to give them potential leads, as he claimed to be fearful that he was going to be blamed for the crime, despite having seemingly never even met her. And it was during some of these many unusual phone calls that he was said to have given details on her disappearance that were never actually made public.
It almost feels like he was just... He felt an immense guilt from doing this, like, horrendous crime. But it almost feels like he just was trying to make sure that the police would never find out that it was him. I mean, even like when all this time passed, he's still super fearful of him being like found guilty of, you know, doing this crime that he obviously did. But it was really weighing on his conscience, man. But, you know, I just think that someone like this guy, you know, he needs to be under the jail. I mean, or even worse. I mean, I don't know what's worse than that, but I just cannot stand people who commit these kind of crimes to kids, man.
His obsession was entirely uncanny, bringing up her disappearance at random even decades later, with his Facebook post being a perfect example. And as it turns out, one of Steven's most incriminating statements came as a result of something he mentioned in that infamous message.
What?
In it, Steven says that his son Carl had been murdered in 2008, which is in fact true, as the murder was actually fully solved, with it being confirmed that Steven had nothing to do with it. But when he was mourning the loss of Carl, something unusual happened. His now ex-wife recalled that following Carl's death, Pinky never once cried, until the day before his memorial service, where she watched him from a distance walk up to their son's urn and begin to sob, eventually blurting out, "I hope God didn't allow this to happen because of Jonelle Matthews."
Oh.
Despite maintaining his innocence to this day, Pinky was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 2040, his conviction coming 12,634 days after Jonelle Matthews' disappearance, with Pinky's cryptic Facebook post serving as a dark relic of his twisted obsession that would eventually expose him as Jonelle's killer.
I really hate that it took this long, but I mean, sometimes it takes that long for justice to like be served, you know? But I hate that this guy got to live like through majority of his life, and you know, her life got cut super short, you know? Just because of some sick asshole like this guy. And the fact that he was just obsessing over this case, and I don't know exactly why someone like him would obsess over this case. I can only think that he probably just didn't want to get caught, and I think it was just stressing him out, like, you know, this entire time over all these years. But it made him super like in tune to what was going on. I guess that's like just my reasoning for why he would do that. But it's sad, man. What a video. What a video. Wow, the end.
I want to give a massive shout out to my buddy Ryan, aka Next.
Once again, a really good video, Nick. The one about Johnny though, like, that one pissed me off. The TikTok one made me mad because I hate that these teenage girls took that situation and made it into a fucking joke in a game to put on TikTok. The first one was pretty tragic too. I feel so bad for that guy that just could not escape that building because of terrible work safety regulations that were not implemented correctly. I really feel like that could have been avoided, you know? But all of these cases were, you know, a doozy. It was a doozy. Anyway, guys, please go support Nick Crowley and his channel. Go support his videos. Subscribe to his channel, you know? And if you enjoy my reaction, give me a thumbs up, share, and subscribe. And I'll be back with some more reactions. Peace!